What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wisdom Across Time. I appreciate all of you guys clicking on today's content. We're going to be talking about how to age gracefully. Now, as you know, I talked to my grandfather. He's in his 80s. He is very healthy and he's lived a life full of healthy habits, not just with his physical body, but also with his mind. Health has been something that's been on everyone's mind, especially after the lockdown, and I feel like this is a perfect time to talk about what his tips and his habits were in order to live a healthy lifestyle so that us younger guys, we can live healthy lifestyles and live our life to the fullest, because life is meant to live, and not just live, but live in a way we want to. And that's not hooked up to machines, that's not on dialysis, that's not with a breathing tube and all these different things. We want full expression of life. Another reason this information is so valuable is because unfortunately we've seen a decline in life expectancy in the United States. From the 1920s, people lived only about 47 years. And then if you move up the scale to the 1960s, they lived about 68 years. And then if you move the scale up even further to 2019, right before we had lockdown, it was the highest life expectancy's ever been. Just about 79 years was the full life expectancy. And ever since then, moving into 2021, it's actually dropped to 76, 75 years. And the number one causes of the decline and death has been heart attack or heart disease, liver failure, and self-deletion. So my goal, just like everything I do on this channel, is to help inspire and create healthy habits and positivity so that you guys can take this information, share it with your friends and family, and implement it in your lives and be the example. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast and it helps you out in any way. Have you always been this health conscious, or have you always been health conscious?
As I reflect on growing up with my grandparents, they were both Southerners. So at that time, there was a lot of quote unquote Southern cooking. And, and a lot of that was the use of what is called lard.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
for frying this and frying that, right? My grandparents did that to their to their dismay. I mean, so I grew up in that kind of environment. So there weren't any quote unquote smoothies. There were, some form of oatmeal. So it wasn't until I got pretty much into college, not that I was eating pretty much unhealthy, but I guess today would be quote unquote seemingly unhealthy. Where in fact, I was on the basketball team and we would have our breakfast and all of that we could get from the coach's recommendations, and that was pretty healthy. Technology has helped older generations, such as mine, in offering smartphones that I have a Fitbit that records, my healthy habits and exercising and so forth, and that has been very helpful. Currently, I have smoothies and I get it from Costco, and it has the berries and all the recommended fruits. I eat cereal, a lot of it with pumpkin seeds and things of that nature. I do drink a lot of coffee. That I just got used to that. There I can put in soy milk or regular milk. And I would say that I'm very health food minded today. In the I would say last 10 to 15 years, I've been very much focused on healthy cuisines.
What caused that shift? Was it just you observing maybe other friends or family around you? And
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Some of my family members are overweight, and my mother was never overweight, but her sister Co was. A lot of siblings on Co did not eat healthy. Some of them died early on, had diabetes and so forth. And I was alerted and concerned then. And as I evolved and as the journey continued, I saw friends that unfortunately had bad cases of, there are no good cases of diabetes, but just diabetes was rampant. And that wasn't something I wanted to expose myself to. And so, with being able to get the smartphone, I said to myself, not only does it inspire me to stay healthy, but also hopefully inspires the family in regards to, what is grandpa, what is dad and grandpa doing? Am I doing half as good as he, and so forth? So it's so important that folks of my age kind of look at their diet. And I think I sent you a survey by the AARP, which kind of had a survey on African Americans and their healthy habits. And if I may, I normally don't read from reports, but I like to at least quote this that I found just so interesting. It says, because it kind of reminds me of what we're doing with our episodes. It says, with age comes wisdom. And in the case regarding what contributes to a healthy mind and body, and you and I continue to talk about that, AARP found with a greater awareness of the importance of diet, weight, physical activities, and controlling stress among the course respondents over the age of 50 as opposed to those younger. So I found that to be interesting and pretty much describes me.
Absolutely. That ties into some of the research that I did. There's a doctor, he was a Harvard Fellowship graduate, and his name's Dr. Joseph Kavdar. And he basically explained how the number one important thing when it comes to longevity is having a sense of purpose, number one. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, it is maintaining social connections with loved ones, friends, family. And number three, physical exercise. So I think that ties into a lot of what you were just talking about. We're in a place now where health has become so much more important, essentially, since the lockdowns, that I think more and more studies and information is coming out that is really helping people just deal with not only mental, but physical health as well. And I'm glad that we're doing this topic right now.
Yes, and I agree. I think COVID has shed a light on a lot of things. We talked about the mental health, unfortunately, been detrimental to our community and the rise of suicides. And one of the things that the AARP also pointed out, and we'll talk about some of the other kind of key points that are in this survey, is that the importance, as you pointed out, of contact, staying in touch with folks. And I was surprised, but somewhat surprised that folks over 50 did not have too much of a problem with stress and depression. And this survey was done in May. I find that to be interesting because of what you just said and what we've just gone through, which is COVID, that has and still does kind of limit the exposure we have to family and friends. And because and now we're getting from CDC the rise of another or a couple of more variants that are very contagious. Companionship is so important, but it has to be obviously advisable and safe. Mental health is so important along with healthy habits. And I find that reading is so important. Like you pointed out in some of our, while in fact I do turn on the news, I do
What?
remember. Shame on Grandpa.
Yeah.
Uh, I spend more time on and some of my Florence would say I spend too much time on the financial channels, but And now that we have tennis and football is starting, I find that relaxing. So less of the news and what's going on politically, and more kind of entertainment is so healthy to me, and I'm sure to your age group, and it's so delightful to be able to have that.
What has, in your experience, the number one factor in maintaining like your health as you've gotten older?
Well, first of all, I want to live a little longer, uh, but living a little longer and not being healthy is not something I want to be. My mom, your great grandma, was, she died in her 80s. My grandpa Leach died in his 90s, as did grandma Leach. And both of them had a sense of Parkinson, but also, as I said early on, the diets that they were on didn't help. So here I am now in my 80s and early 80s, and I'm so fortunate to be both fairly mentally sharp and healthy and physically healthy, but I work at it. And the point here is that you have to work at it, and it's a challenge. I try to get out and walk, and when I do that, I try to do it. Uh, I'm lucky to have an area where I can walk, and there are hills. So I push myself, and normally, as you've said, or as you've read on my printout from Fibbit, that I try to do when I go outside and walk, I try to do 3 miles. And that's been challenging, but very healthy. And so it challenges me both mentally and physically. Don't give up. Keep pushing, Grandpa. Keep pushing. And so I'm fortunate to have that fortitude. And it does take fortitude and determination to stay healthy. And if I want to continue on this journey, I want to have these conversations with you, all of our family, and your audience. I have to work at it. That's my intention, and that's my focus.
It has to come from within, is what I'm hearing you
Yes,
say as well. You have to
yes,
have that desire to want to live, and not only just live, but live a healthy life.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know that and wanting to live is not just akin to age. It's all along the journey,
Yeah.
wanting to live, and not all of us are fortunate enough to be in environments that allow that healthy participation to be there at our fingertips, and it's challenging being perhaps in the inner city and not being able to go to a park, or not being able to walk safely. So there are a lot of challenges among, our communities. So we try to find out ways to do it, be it hopefully through a gym or a health spot in the neighborhood if you're in the inner city. And those of us that are out in the country or wherever, that we just have the determination and intention to go out and try to stay healthy or get healthy, both. And that's determination, self-determination.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you could give any advice to any young people that are listening, my audience is usually around like 20 to like 35 years old, in that age range. What advice in regards to health, either mentally or physically, nutritionally, would you give, or would you have liked to have had, that you've maybe picked up or learned along the way and implemented, that's now helped you out?
We talked about, and we'll continue to talk about, mental health. And we also talked about the reservation of getting therapy. And I think that mental challenges have no age limit. And so if in fact your generation And you've got so much going on with your generation. You've got all the social platforms. You hear about how some of these social platforms have unfortunately stirred up dislike among others and questioning some of the young people's own worth and appreciation. That leads to disastrous outcomes. So the platforms, as you know, while in fact yours is so positive, I see that there are so many that aren't. And so mental health among young people is so critical that they reach out with folks like you, reach out to family members in therapy and therapists as well. Health providers, we need to make sure that because you're young, you don't need to see a doctor. It's very important that you make sure you have a handle on how you're doing, not only mentally, but physically. Even though you may feel well, there may be things going on. And we need to make sure that we see doctors and nurses on a, fairly regular basis to keep up what's going on internally. So I recommend that. And stress has no age as well. And as you know, how do you deal with stress? And you have the fortune to be an influencer. You've got a great audience. You not only speak to it, but you live it. And that's so important that hopefully that not only that our family enjoy our episodes, but your audience increases, and by word of mouth, because of all the positivity that you provide in your episodes. So I would say to all of them is to seek out positive individual, surround yourself with as much positive influence as you can. And when it becomes challenging, please reach out to friends and family, and don't think because you're young that things are okay internally. Make sure that you at least consider seeing doctors on somewhat of a scheduled basis.
The National Institute of Aging basically said stress was the number one ager, the thing that ages us the most, behind our diet and exercise and our social connections, but it was stress. And I'm just wondering if maybe you've seen the effects of stress on anyone growing up and how that aged them.
Let me relate to one family member. His Uncle Al, he served in the Korean War, came back. He was the first to be a family member to go to college, married a woman and was a smoker, and he tried his darndest to get her off of smoking. It became such a problem that she eventually had to have an oxygen tent or oxygen either to be beside her. And that caused a lot of stress on him. I saw that, because I was fairly close to him. She eventually died. I can only say that the stress and the depression of her passing and his trying to live as healthy a life as he could. The only thing I could make, he gave up, and that shocked me. Stress, I do not take lightly. How do I handle it? It has not been something that comes easy. As you know, there have been a lot of uneventful deaths in our family. I've always been somewhat of a individual of faith, and I grew up in my grandparents and my mom and were very people of faith. So I don't take faith lightly. It's so important to have some belief, if you will, because many times, while in fact your family and friends and therapists are helpful, you've got to help yourself, if you will. And I find faith to be helpful to me. And it's not having to go to church, it's just believing, sense of Bible. In this case, I do get, and it's just amazing, and the family know this, as a minister, I'd still get weekly letters from him with various gospels, weekly. And he's in Connecticut and I'm here in Maryland. So faith is so important, at least in my life, has been helpful.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It's hard for me to relate to someone that doesn't have a faith, because I'm just wondering, where do they really go when things get tough? Like, because I know that I personally, I can only handle so much stress before I need to present it to a higher power, to God, and like release that and know that I'm going to get through this. I've been through similar situations in the past, and that there will be a way out of this. Like there's nothing that's presented to me in this lifetime that I can't handle. I truly believe life is a test, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way. But explaining that to someone that doesn't have faith is just like it's really difficult for me, because they think I'm crazy. I think they're crazy. It's just like, yeah. But that's beautiful that you had that faith growing up in the house, and then now you're being connected once again through this minister, and he's sending you verses and connecting you back into it.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. I'm not saying it happens to everyone. Let me give you a quick incident. I just celebrated a birthday. So I was out with Florence at a restaurant celebrating my birthday, and two things happened. Number one, I was thinking of ordering oysters, and for some reason, I just didn't feel good on ordering oysters. Lo and behold, as you're probably reading, is that there's bacteria in oysters that have killed people. This came up on the screen as, we were doing some things on our smartphones. And she looked at me and said, "Wow, that's unbelievable that you would not order the oysters because of some feeling you had." Then I get a call from the Reverend, and the Reverend says, "Collins, we haven't talked in a while, and the reason being that I had a stroke. But I wanted to reach out to you today and tell you that I haven't sent a letter in a while because of the stroke." And I said, "Well, Reverend, I'm sorry to hear about that, but I have to tell you something. You're calling me on my birthday." I said, "But it's just amazing that you would call me on my birthday." There are things that happen in our life that I attributed to faith. And I just had to tell you about two incidents that I have no reason to believe other than God was looking out for me